seal numbers because the exhibits was not sealed.
Okay, thank you.
General, does that mean then that maybe let me ask my question differently. Is there a way, given what you've just said now, explaining they were not sealed and so there were no seal numbers at that point, is there a way of independently, that you would independently have been able to verify that indeed it was 551 bricks of cocaine that were found in that container? And I'm talking about what happens from the time that that container is open up to this warrant officer Perumal, where they get to him and then ask for the SAP 13 register.
Yes, indeed, commissioners. If proper crime scene notes or contemporaneous notes were kept by the lead investigator, obviously during that counting process it will be recorded either in a pocketbook or on foolscap. That's the first safeguard. Then obviously it gets placed in exhibit seal bag, sealed, and upon handing in at the police station, the SAP 13 clerk will obviously then verify what he or she is accepting. And then the third safeguard obviously will then be when the exhibits is received at the Forensic Science Laboratory. It is opened by the analysts and then obviously counted again, and that will be independent verification then for the initial claims by the investigators that it's 541 bricks.
None of that happened here? Those steps that you're describing?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then you mentioned non-tamper evidence bags. What is the purpose of it being non-tamper?
The importance of that, Commissioners, is that we preserve the integrity of the exhibits. So it means that whenever that exhibits arrive in that exhibit seal bags at FSL and it has been tampered with, it will be clearly visible. Whether the seal was, for instance, if somebody tried to open it, or if somebody tried to cut the bag and then remove exhibits and then reseal it, that will be evident. So there is scientific safeguards built into those exhibit bags that prevent tampering, obviously to the benefit of preserving the integrity of the exhibits.
Now, if the process is done correctly and it's in the non-tamper evidence bag, who is authorized to open the bags?
Well, it depends on where in the value chain that exhibit is, Commissioner. But under normal circumstances, it will obviously be at the Forensic Science Laboratory, where the analyst that the matter is assigned to will open the exhibit bag. I cannot see another reason for reopening a bag and to remove exhibits from that without a good reason.
Assume that the process is followed correctly, and here you have the LCRC crime scene examiner bagging the evidence into these non-tamper bags at the crime scene. It goes to the police station, it's logged into the SAP 13 register, and then it's stored. Can somebody from FSL request that the investigating officer or somebody from LCRC open the bag in order to get a sample, for example?
Commissioners, if that happens, I will find it extremely strange, because the exhibits, according to the protocol, needs to be submitted to the Forensic Science Laboratory for, obviously, the weighing of the exhibits, photographing, the actual analysis. because especially in a major drug bust, it serves no purpose for an investigator who has perhaps no scientific background to obtain samples, because we do not even know if it will be randomly obtained. So it makes no sense.
Thank you, General. So we were at paragraph 45, and you were dealing with Warrant Officer Perumal acknowledged that the exhibits were entered into the SAP 13, and you were at thereafter. It's the fourth line.
Yes. Thereafter, the exhibits were immediately signed out. So it means that Warrant Officer Perumal did not keep the exhibits in his safe custody. It was booked out immediately.
What does that mean, immediately?
Well, they basically, Commissioner, they basically booked in the exhibits and then booked it out immediately. So there's other columns in that register.
Simultaneously?
Simultaneously.
Yes. No, because if you know anything about this commission, you will know that immediately can mean the following month.
No,
So it was
immediately.
on the same day?
On the same day, at the same time and place, Commissioner.
Thank you, General. So it was immediately signed out, and then according to the officers?
According to the officers, there was not sufficient space at the Isipingo SAPS to store the exhibits. According to Warrant Officer Perumal, no inquiry was made with him regarding capacity to store the exhibits in the armory at Isipingo SAPS. According to Colonel Jacob, Brigadier Campbell Newswa gave an instruction to take the cocaine to Port Shepstone for storage after consulting Major General Sanona, Provincial Head of DPCI KZN.
Before you proceed, General, who's Brigadier Campbell Newswa?
Brigadier Newswa is the Provincial Commander for Serious Organized Crime within KZN DPCI Commissioners.
That was a position that you held at Northwest before.
That's correct, Commissioners.
Be reporting to?
By then, he would have been reporting to Major General Sanona.
Okay. You may proceed.
The exhibits were transported to the DPCI Port Shepstone Serious Organized Crime Investigation Unit's premises for storage. Lieutenant Colonel Prinsloo, who was the unit commander of the DPCI Soki, was informed of the arrangement and allowed the strong room at the premises to be used to store the exhibits. General Sanona took possession of the keys to the strong room after the exhibits were stored.
Can you just explain Lieutenant Colonel Prinsloo, his position as, you said unit commander, but in preparation for your evidence, you said he was the acting unit commander. So who would he have been reporting to as the unit commander?
Commissioners, he would have been reporting to Brigadier Newswa as a direct line of command, as the Brigadier was or is in command of serious organized crime investigation.
And then you say General Sanona took possession of the keys to the strong room after the exhibits were stored. Can you just explain that process? How does it work? The keys, where's the keys ordinarily kept?
Commissioners, it's in fact a very simple process, but the key holder, obviously when you take over a SAP 13 facility, you need to obviously conduct a proper audit of all the exhibits there. Under the circumstances here, all the other exhibits or articles were removed from the safe, but there needs to be a proper handing over of that facility then, obviously, as well as the key or keys to the SAP 13 or the vault.
And these keys are the keys to where the cocaine was going to be stored?
That's correct, Commissioners.
And routinely, who keeps that key? Is it, because General Sonona at that stage was the provincial head of DPCI. So this seems to me to be an operational matter, the keeping of the keys.
Commissioners, in practice, it is the SAP 13 custodian that will maintain the command and control over a SAP 13 facility. By no means the provincial head.
That was my follow-up question. Who was actually responsible for the custody of this consignment of drugs? And at what point did it move from SAPS to DPCI? Because my understanding is that if it had been at the Isipingo SAPS, SAPS would have been responsible for that. So
Yep.
how does it work when it then moves to the Port Shepstone warehouse of the DPCI? And who then becomes responsible? Is it still SAPS or is it now DPCI? Understanding that they are all part of SAPS, but they are just different units.
Yeah, Commissioners, thank you for that question. Obviously, if the exhibits were left at Isipingo after it was booked in, it would have been the responsibility of the station commander and obviously the SAP 13 clerk to ensure that the exhibits are kept behind lock and key. The moment the DPCI booked it in and booked it out immediately, they assumed responsibility for that exhibits.
But could DPCI do that?
That's correct, Commissioner. There is provisions in the national instructions that the DPCI is having authority to have separate SAP 13 facilities. By nature of our work, obviously, all exhibits cannot necessarily be immediately entered at the police station due to the sensitivity of investigations.
So you are satisfied that these exhibits were lawfully removed from Isipingo SAPS?
It's lawfully removed indeed, Commissioner.
Thank you.
General, as I think you call him the key holder. In this case, General Sonona became the key holder. Did I understand you correctly to say ordinarily a key holder would have had to satisfy themselves about what is in that in that space for which they are holding a key? So it's not simply a matter of it's sufficient to just take the key. You know there's that and you keep the key, but you have to be satisfied that what's in there is what they tell you has been put in that room. Is that how it works?
That's correct, Commissioner. You understand me 100% correct. It means that the general was supposed to satisfy him of the contents that's being placed in that vault before he assumed responsibility for the content as well as for the keys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. General, do you know whether General Sonona was present when the drugs were put into the strong room?
That's correct, Commissioners. General Sonona was present at Port Shepstone when the exhibits were placed in the SAP 13 facility or the vault.
And can I just understand more about the possession of the keys? If you want to then access, if any of the investigating officers need to access the exhibits for whatever reason, how do they access it, and would they have to inform the key holder that they want to gain access?
In practice, Commissioners, the SAP 13 clerk or the custodian is the only person who is allowed to open that vault and to lock it again, because that maintains obviously chain of custody and ensure that if anything goes wrong, there's for instance exhibits missing from that safe, that SAP 13 responsible person will have to account for it.
Thank you, General. Then at paragraph 47,
On 23 June 2021, the officers sealed the exhibits with the assistance of Port Shepstone personnel. On 24 June 2021, the officers retrieved samples from the exhibits in Port Shepstone and forwarded the samples to FSL for analysis. So the officers that's referred to here, Commissioners, is indeed Lieutenant Colonel Sabia, Warrant Officer Mpangase, as well as other officials from Port Shepstone that assisted with the process.
now they accessed 23 and 24 June. How did they access it?
Commissioners, according to the statements and reports in the case docket, Major General Sonona provided the key to Warrant Officer Mpangase to gain access into the vault and to perform the duties to seal the exhibits and then to go back and obtain samples of it.
He gave the key, he didn't attend the premises to ensure that they are doing what they're supposed or what they intended to do.
That's correct, Commissioners.
Now, let's deal with the 23 June 2021, the sealing of the exhibits at the Port Shepstone premises. We know that it was already booked into the SAP 13 at Isipingo, and now you have the exhibits being sealed. What's the purpose of the sealing at that stage? What are they doing at that stage? Are they putting it into the non-tamper evidence bags?
That's correct, Commissioner. Basically, the exhibits is then placed in the bags and then sealed. But it's ex post facto. It was supposed to be done at the crime scene.
And then on the...
And the opening and closing of the storage facility, did that accord with what you told us not so long ago? You said only, you mentioned the job title.
The custodian of the SAP 13,
Yes,
Commissioners.
yes. Only that person can open and close. And this time you say it was Officer Mpangase who did.
That opened.
Yes. Did that accord with the process or procedure you told us?
By no means, Chairperson.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Ordinarily, would there be a record of the key being given to the custodian of the key opening, Mpangase getting in, whatever, and when I say Mpangase, it's just a placeholder, could be anybody, getting in, doing the sealing, then completing the job. Is all of that supposed to be recorded? And in this case, was it recorded?
Commissioners, the register makes provision for obviously the booking in and booking out of exhibits. So here obviously the whole process was upside down, to say the least. And it was never supposed to happen like that. So if General Sonona had proper control over the key, he was supposed to open that safe and not provide the key to anybody under his command to go into that facility, because he will never be able to account for what transpired there in his absence.
I think the question is also a different one, is in the normal course, would the custodian have a register of every person that had entered the strong room? or asked him for access to the key so that there's a record of who went into the strong room?
Not necessarily, Commissioners, because the only reason why an investigator will go back to an SAP 13 will be to book out the exhibits that was previously booked in and to take it to the Forensic Science Laboratory and then obviously sign for it in the register. So there's no specific provision for investigators to go into that type of facilities. There will be no proper explanation for that, except for booking out exhibits.
Suppose unless an investigator, such as, let's say, Mpanga say, he puts it in his diary or in his book where he says, I got in at this time, this is what I did, and that would be the record. Otherwise, there's no provision for him getting in and doing the work that he ended up doing in there.
That's correct, Commissioners. It was supposed to be recorded in a pocketbook.
Thank you.
Then, General, can we deal with the other entry on paragraph 47, which is the 24 June 2021, that the officers then retrieve samples of the exhibits and forward the samples to FSL. So at this stage, the exhibits are in the non-tamper sealed evidence bags. They open the bags and they take a sample. What is your view on that process?
Commissioners, first and foremost, there was no need to go and obtain samples of that bricks of cocaine because the whole consignment, as with all other previous consignments, was supposed to be sent to the Forensic Science Laboratory. There was no need to obtain samples. As I've testified earlier, investigators are not scientists. We do not have knowledge about random sampling for that process to be correctly performed, to enable forensic science to conduct their work effectively and efficiently so. So it does not make sense to me why the colleagues went back to that facility to obtain samples.
And do you know whether they actually did obtain the samples and send it to FSL?
That's correct, Commissioners. According to the evidence, indeed, there were samples taken and submitted to the Forensic Science Laboratory.
And was there any explanation given by FSL as to why the request was made for the samples? Because according to it says that they forwarded the samples to FSL for analysis. So FSL presumably would have requested the sample, or are they doing it of their own initiative?
I'm not sure of the details in relation to that, Commissioners, but I can follow up on that.
Now, if all the exhibits were supposed to go to the FSL, can you think of any reason why samples would be taken beforehand and a day or actually 2 days after the seizure?
Commissioners, from all the other inquiries of similar seizures that I've read and perused, this is the only matter where such samples were obtained. So I find it extremely strange why it would have been done differently now. The only conclusion I can come to is that it was never the intention to take this whole batch of exhibits to the Forensic Science Laboratory.
In other words, it was never the intention for the 541 kilograms?
The 541 bricks. I'm referring to the totality of it, Commissioners.
Thank you, General. Then, General, there's a subtopic, procedural failings during the search and seizure operation, paragraph 48.
In drug bust cases, the presence of drugs within a shipment does not in itself establish knowledge on the part of persons associated with that shipment. Thus, evidence collected at the crime scene is crucial, especially physical evidence in the form of fingerprints and DNA from the bricks and the container seal and the wrapping used to wrap the drugs. If this evidence is not collected or collected incorrectly, the already slim chance of identifying the perpetrators is made all the more unlikely.
General, can we just deal with the first part, the slim chance? How successful are you in actually finding the perpetrators of consignment, these kind of trafficking?
Commissioners, not that successful, especially in cases where the rip-on, rip-off method is being utilized due to the fact that these crimes are committed in secrecy, and only the sender and the final destination obviously knows about this consignment. So there's not necessarily objective evidence that will link these perpetrators to the commission of this offense. Obviously, when